Well, let's switch. We're going to now go into the more formal presentation, and I'm going to talk fairly fast because we want to get through it and have time for you all to ask questions. But as Gretchen said, we can stay on later and answer more questions. Next slide, Dave. So just really quick, what is co-housing? Co-housing, intentional community based on cooperation, collaboration, mutual respect. It's self-governing and self-managed. We operate this community based on consensus. We want to make sure we hear everyone's voice, and we don't want to drop into a win-lose type of decision-making. It's living with friends, committed to community. Very much a value that's central here. We believe it's the best antidote for elder isolation. And legally, we are a condo association as far as the state knows. We are a co-housing entity within a legally, formally a condo. There are about 300 formal co-housing communities around the United States. There is, speaking to Leanne, I think, or no, Marcia, there is a national co-housing association called Co-Housing US, and they have a database of all the existing and forming communities, and that's the best place to go to keep track of what might be in various areas. Okay, next slide, Dave. So PDX Common, this is our recent group picture. You'll recognize some of us. We are 38 individuals living in 27 condominium units. It's a 4-story building in urban Southeast Portland. We moved in 2017. We have a frequent service bus right outside our door. It's a vibrant neighborhood, lots of restaurants, supermarkets, marijuana stores you can walk to, beer bars, with my favorite. We are member owned and member managed. And we're going to talk more about how we all share the fun. And we believe it's currently Oregon's only operating senior co-housing community. Next slide. So again, the owners. We are the owners. This upper picture is our groundbreaking. We have a PDX scarf that we have there. We are technically a 55 plus community. Our members run from 64 to 83 years. We have 10 couples and 17 singles, and most of the singles are female, following the demographic trends. People are mostly retired, healthcare workers, teachers, banker, accountants, project managers, artists, consultants, all kinds of professional folks live here. All the full member profiles are available on the website. So that's a good way to get a sense of who's here and see if it feels like people you'd like to get to know. Next slide. The building. The building is light steel over concrete construction. It meets LEED requirements for green building, but we didn't get certified because we didn't want to pay the fee. It has excellent sound insulation between the units. It meets Portland's newest seismic category, so it's one of the safer buildings in Portland. It's landscaped. You'll see some pictures of that. We have off-street secured parking for 25 cars. We have indoor bike storage, and we have solar on the roof, which is what you're seeing in the lower picture there. Those are solar panels that run our common space. And what you're seeing in the upper picture is our courtyard. So all the units look out onto the second floor courtyard where we do a lot of our socializing and outdoor eating. Next slide, Dave. So again, common spaces. Some of you talked about that. Our most largest common space is our great room, which you're seeing on the right here. It has a commercial style kitchen and a room for all of us to dine together. We also hold our large meetings here. It's on the second floor. We have a courtyard, which you see in the lower left. That's right outside the great room. We have a rooftop deck that you saw in the last picture where we do some container farming. And we have a media room where we have a large TV. We have a living room. You're seeing that in the upper left here, a library. Colleen is our librarian. We have a laundry room. We have a breakfast nook back in the corner. We have kitchens. We have, the breakfast kitchen. We have 2 guest rooms, which are down the hall. We also have a workout crafts room. And we have an outdoor sauna, which is what you see in the middle. Next slide, please. Okay, the homes. We have 1, 2, and 3 bedroom units. They range in size from 635 to 1,200 square feet. Recently, a 2-bedroom unit sold for $600,000 and a 3-bedroom unit sold for $700,000. So that gives you a sense of the range of costs of our units. We have an outdoor walkway, provides natural ventilation. All the units open out onto it. They have excellent light. We went for new construction because we're in Portland. We want to take advantage of every amount of sun and light we can. So huge windows. Some of the units have balconies. They all have aging in place features with bathrooms sufficient for wheelchairs, door handles, elevator. You can get all around the unit without any stairs. We had someone have a knee replacement, and they were our sample case about getting around. The units are slightly smaller because we do have 5,000 square feet of common space, as we said, and we use it. We use it as like our space. Sometimes people go down to read in the library or have a puzzle going in the great room or have a meeting down in the living room. We have excellent indoor air quality. That was part of it. And we have fairly high-end appliances and washer dryers. Each unit is equipped for a washer and dryer. Some people tend to use the common washer and dryer instead. Next picture, please. Okay, I'm going to turn over to Gretchen.
So I will take over and talk a little bit about how we work life in co-housing. So first of all, we really expect a high degree of engagement from everybody who lives here at PDX Commons, as most co-housing communities do. And so what we've got here are, in the 3 bullet points, are really the 3 legs of a stool of participation that allow us to maintain our building and our community. So one of the things we do is everybody in the community has some sort of a task that they do to help maintain our building. We don't hire staff. We don't have staff here, including paid housekeepers to take care of our building. We all do it ourselves. So each of us has a task. My particular task is after rains or during rains, I sweep water off the walkways. But we have people who are gardeners. We have people who clean the laundry room. We have people who do security walks every evening. We have someone do a security walk and make sure all of our external doors are locked. We have groundskeepers. We have people who clean common bathrooms. We have people who vacuum our great room and our living room. So there's all kinds of tasks that we try to make sure that everybody has something that they can do to help keep our building nice. We also all participate in our management decisions via consensus process. As Lou said, all of our decisions are made in a way that all of us come to agreement, which, as you might imagine, can be a little ponderous with 37 or 38 different opinions, but we have done it really successfully. We have monthly community meetings that everybody's expected to attend, and everybody's expected also to participate in committees and work groups. So everybody's involved in how we manage ourselves. We don't pay someone to manage us. We want to do it ourselves. And the other piece of participation is assisting with community meals. We consider our community meals to be the glue of our community. And although COVID precautions kind of took us away from that for a couple of years, generally our goal is to have at least 2 community meals a week. And those are volunteer chef, we all come together to put the meal together, to set up the room. We come and eat together, enjoy each other's company, and then we participate in the cleanup process. So there's nothing like sitting down and eating together to help people feel like they're connected in. So those are really the 3 pieces of community participation that we expect from everybody. Next slide. But we also participate in a whole lot of fun together to make the work worthwhile. So the common meals are great fun. That top picture is from a very fancy meal. Our meals don't usually look quite that fancy, but in this meal, in this picture on the top, you will also see that our great room is contiguous with our courtyard in the background. So you see those big glass windows. There's also a door there, so we can actually make the courtyard and the great room contiguous space. We have happy hours in the courtyard. We have art exhibits on a regular basis in our art window out on the street. We hold parties and dances, and that picture on the bottom is our annual dance party with a live band. I will just mention briefly that the last time we held this party pre-COVID, the cops showed up at the door. So they were a little surprised to see a bunch of old people just boogieing away. But that's coming up in July. We show movies together. We started holding house concerts right before COVID. We'll probably get back to that. We have a fitness class that meets in the courtyard 3 days a week. We have meditation, yoga. At times, people volunteer. We do group volunteers and also individual volunteering for community organizations. And we do lots of outings. There's a bunch of us that hike. There's people that camp. And we also join up to do national and international travel. So people always have someone to go someplace with. So we've had people go all over the world in small groups. Next slide, Dave. So who thrives in co-housing? We think that one of the biggest skills that you need is the willingness to balance our own individual needs and wishes with what's good for the whole community. And that's probably the hardest thing in our culture to do, is to let go of what I want and what I think is best and try to take into account this whole community and what everybody thinks is best and what is really best for the entire community. So to do that, we need people who enjoy collaboration and teamwork, and people who are willing to really work on their communication skills, because that's so key to getting along with 37 other people. People who have empathy and are able to respect and trust others are really helpful. We really enjoy having people who are willing to pitch in and to take initiative and to share the load and to really do their share. And I want to point out that our community is full of introverts. We have a lot of introverts. And a lot of people are afraid to move into co-housing because they think it's really going to be just one big party, or you'll just have every neighbor sort of like Lou. But in fact, there are a lot of introverts. Lou's just our sort of resident extrovert, so he fills in all the gaps for the people who don't want to talk that much. So we also appreciate people who are really committed to supportive, healthy aging in place together. And that means that we not only receive support from others in the community, but we're willing to provide support. So there's a give and take with that support. New slide, Dave. So life in co-housing is all about active social cognitive engagement. And I would also add physical engagement, because there's a lot to do. It means there's always someone there to help you. And always someone there to listen to you. There's someone to say hi to, always, every day, multiple times a day. If you need an avocado, you just put out an email and you'll have 20 avocados at your door within 5 minutes. If you need something at Costco and you don't have a membership, you can just put out an email and say, can someone pick this up for me at Costco? We give rides to airport, to appointments. We go for hikes. We do all kinds of things. That top picture is a picture of a bunch of us who went to pick blueberries together. So those are blueberries in those bins. You see a picture of our fire table out in the courtyard. And there's our rooftop sunset with Claudette and Robin. So great places. Next slide. We're going to show you a video that we did for our community, and take a look.
We have decided here to create community around common interests, common needs, common values.
Everyone here knows everybody else. There's nobody you wouldn't recognize. There's no one's name you wouldn't know.
We, like most co-housing communities, attempt to make all our decisions by consensus. Part of living in co-housing is learning a different way to make decisions with people.
It's just so much more sustainable to move to more of a sharing economy than a buying economy.
There's a terrific amount of wisdom, not just practical wisdom, but life-lived wisdom.
All through the process of planning and building this place, we were in conversation with the local neighborhood and business groups saying, this is who we are, this is what we're thinking of doing, and we want to be part of what's real here.
The first moment I walked into my new home, I felt this instant feeling of security.
I chose a 2-bedroom, 2-bath unit. I find it's just perfect.
In the design and development phase, sustainability was of utmost importance to the PDX Commons community. One, in the orientation of the building and the arrangement of all the units around the courtyard, allowing for great solar exposure and natural ventilation throughout the units. The second aspect was in the selection and use of naturally sustainable materials. And then thirdly, the inclusion of solar panels on the roof to power the common areas in the project.
We have 2 guest rooms, and they're really nice.
This is the farm where we plant crops for anybody that wants to come up and harvest. People can come, they can have their own little plot, and they can have something that they can give back to the community at the same time.
There's a lot of aliveness in our community.
We participate in food drives, we participate in some volunteer services in schools.
We've had a lot of work to try to keep us COVID safe because we know that we're more vulnerable during this time.
Having a local artist display in the window is another part of our community engagement.
We have found either individual artists or artists through local art associations.
We also have this knockout dance party every year.
And every celebration here must involve food.
We have an incredible group of extremely good cooks here.
You know, you put together a menu, you plan the meal, you get a team together, you brief your team, everybody gets a job.
And then we enjoy the meals together.
PDX Commons was very focused on selecting a site within a vibrant neighborhood that offered as many walkable amenities as possible, grocery stores, coffee shops, and other unique boutiques.
Whenever I don't want to cook, I know that I can go across to one of the food carts.
There's an excellent bus that goes downtown, and I've become friends with one of the bus drivers.
We're very closely centered between the Laurelhurst Park and the Mount Tabor Park.
Where we're located, there are also lots of urban walks to do. Portland has a wonderful network of bike paths and dedicated bikeways on streets.
There are a lot of dogs in this neighborhood. Sam is our dog, and he has an interest in happy hour.
Co-housing is a form of practicing real democracy.
I am firmly convinced that I will live longer and happier as a result of being here.
All you have to do is walk out the front door, and there's going to be a couple of people who are going to say, hey, how's it going?
And I can honestly say from that perspective, it's the best place I've ever lived.
Gosh, I wish I could live there. So now we're going to have Martha and Michael unmute themselves. Martha and Michael are 2 of our newer members. Michael, I'm sorry, your name is spelled wrong. So let's start with Martha, and what they're going to do is just spend a couple of minutes talking to us about what it was like to move into PDX Commons. So Martha, shall we start with you?
Sure. I had been living in a little duplex here in Portland with a sweet little garden that I liked a lot. But I was beginning to think that it would be better for me to find a community that I could be part of. And I didn't really know about co-housing. I didn't even know what it was, although I walked by this building, which wasn't really an apartment building, but was something interesting. In any case, I began to talk with my daughter about looking for an alternative place to live. And she's a realtor and happened to notice on the real estate line that there was a unit for sale in this building. So in spite of the fact that it was a concept that we didn't know much about, we came to explore it. And I have to say that the whole process, since I was the first kind of newbie in this setup, I was just so impressed by the genuine friendliness and helpfulness of everybody. And people greet me by name. It may have been a way for them to remember what my name was. Took me a while to remember what everybody's name is. But it was an unknown but really extraordinary experience. Very comforting. I've been here a year now. It's hard to believe. I've participated in some of the wonderful dinners. I have fun being one of the farmers of stuff up on the roof when it's season. It's going to be that season right away soon. Mm-hmm. And the automatic helpfulness of the residents was a surprise to me. Somebody needs a ride to the airport. Somebody needs to be picked up at an ungodly hour at the airport. Someone will offer to do it. If people have illnesses that immobilize them for a while, that there's a whole cadre of people who volunteer to cook meals. So it's quite impressive. I wouldn't say it's perfect because nothing is, but I appreciate that even with difficult subjects, this group of people sincerely wants to govern by consensus. And it's an amazing concept. So what else can I say, Gretchen? Gretchen is my neighbor. She opens difficult jars for me. She's one of the strongest people in the building, by the way. Yeah. The music is great. The outdoor space is great. It's very good.
Thank you, Martha. And that
You're
jar
welcome.
was a tight lid on that jar, I must say.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Martha. Michael, what would you
You're
like?
welcome.
Okay, well, we live not too far from here in a very large house, about 3,500 square feet, filled with stuff. And we decided it was time to downsize. And we first looked at continued care places that were very nice, very expensive, and they took care of everything. And I really didn't want a place where I didn't have any say in what was going to happen. They just told us what's going to happen. And we knew about PDX Commons for many years. And when we found there was an opening, we jumped. The transition was interesting because we had to suddenly get rid of all this stuff. And my children were delighted because a lot of the furniture and art that we had that they were waiting for us to die to get, they could get before we died. And so they were really happy about that. But it wasn't easy to get rid of a lot of stuff. When we got here, we were just amazed about the friendliness of people, the help, how people helped, and on happy hour, learning about the life of the people here. They've had some amazing experiences, and it was just so much fun. And the person who said that they're a storyteller, there's lots of storytellers here. They would fit right in because we love to hear stories. And there's plenty of light here. Someone was wondering about the light. What surprised me the most, I think, is how much fun it's here. I mean, I don't think I've laughed as much in the last year than I have for many years. We've had so much fun here. in so variety of ways. And the food with the common meals are really fun to be with too. The other thing that surprised me, as Martha said, is the democracy here. How everything is discussed, agreed upon, and if not, there are processes where people get together and come to a common understanding. And it's just amazing how that works. I'm very impressed with that. So we've had a great time here, and we have so many new friends here, and our dog has so many good friends here too. So it's been lots of fun. Thank you.
We had the same community for the first 4 years that we lived here. And then we had some switch outs during the pandemic for people wanting to be closer to family or something. So it's been a real treat to kind of have this infusion last year of some new people and some new energy and new ideas. And so we've really loved having our newer members. So thanks, Martha and Michael, for being brave enough to talk about it. And if you all who are guests on this want to talk more with them about their experience, just hang on, we're going to get there. So Dave, can we pop back to the slideshow? So a few more things I just want to talk about. I think that Michael sort of talked about sort of the difference between living in an other managed, a corporation managed type place. And that would be both like another kind of senior residence community that's managed by a corporation as opposed to co-housing, or even just moving into a condominium to downsize as opposed to living in co-housing. And so here's some of the differences is usually in most places you go to live, you know few of your neighbors, but here we know everybody really well. It's astonishing. I talk to my friends about it's like having 37 brothers and sisters because it really feels like we're a family, and you get to know how everybody approaches problems different, how everybody solves problems differently. And so you realize that it's very extensive social life. So it's not anonymous. Everybody's looking out for you. In most places, there's limited participation opportunities. And here we, again, really expect people to use their brains, and they bring their brains to the community and help make decisions together because we have to manage this place. So in most places, there are few responsibilities, and here we expect a lot. We do. But again, I think as Tom said in the video, he expects to live longer and better in this community than he would if he was on his own. So we pretty much think that's true. Next slide. The other thing I wanted to point out is that there are very few senior co-housing communities relative to the multi-generational co-housing community. So for people who are interested in co-housing, that's a decision that you get to make. Dave, back up. There you go. Multi-generational co-housing communities, you have that large age diversity. So you've got families with children, older adults, and everybody in between. And so with that age diversity, you get a wider diversity of activities, interests, focus, ideas, energy. So there's a lot of different things going on in multi-generational communities. In senior communities like PDX Commons, we're actually much more focused on healthy aging together, interdependently with this kind of mutual support going on. And it also allowed us to design our building and design our activities and our management decisions around our own healthy aging, rather than having to sort of dilute that focus to deal with people in other generations. So there are some people who think that seniors should not isolate themselves from other generations or be warehoused or something like that. I think that here at PDX Commons, we believe it's actually to our benefit to kind of pool our abilities and resources and really be able to focus on healthy aging while we welcome in our guests from other generations. So you will very oftentimes see our grandchildren and our children running through the building and then go home. That works. Next slide. And I think Lou, you're on.
Yeah. So what, where do we go in the next 6 months? We're certainly looking forward and feeling the loosening COVID restrictions. We've started having common meals again, not as frequently as we used to. We've started having some face-to-face meetings. We're starting to hold we have a monthly business meeting, and this month we're going to do it as a hybrid, some in person and some on Zoom. So that's a new development. We're going to have the dance party. You've heard about that several times. July 30th. If you want to come, send us an email. We had about 125 people at the dance party. We have groups working on looking at our agreements of how we live together, our governing documents, if you will. And those are primarily all on our website. You can find them there under the resale category. But we currently have a group looking at our visions and values, because those were created, way before we even moved in. And now we have new people and better understanding. So they're updating that. So we're going to be talking about that during the summer. We also are continuing to talk about this idea of aging in community. What does that mean? How do we deal with the fact that we are getting older and some of our capabilities are changing? We're getting wiser, but some things are also harder. So we have a group that's focusing on that, and we regularly have speakers that come and talk to us about that. So we also are very active in helping other co-housing communities. We've co-sponsored things with other groups. We've referred people to other communities who are currently looking for people. So we're very much committed to promoting co-housing as much as possible. Back to you, Gretchen.
So now that we know all of you who don't yet live at PDX Commons certainly want to, because we're pretty sure you love it. If you're in the area, we're happy to offer tours again. This was off the table for a couple of years, but we're back to being really excited to show off where we live. So if you're visiting in the area and you want to come take a look, or if you live in the area, if you go to the website, there's a website contact page. The website is pdxcommons.com, org, I don't know, something, you'll find it. What did you say, Lou?
It's .com.
.com, okay. pdxcommons.com, and there's a contact form there, and so you can just click on tours and that gets back to me and I'll set something up. For people who are really thinking, oh, I would really like to live there someday, you're welcome to join our wait list. Openings are pretty few and far between, I will say that. The people who live here like living here, and so we don't get a lot of openings, but we do have a wait list. The way the wait list works is that you can be a part of the wait list, and then if a PDX Commons owner decides to sell for some reason, that ability to make an offer on that unit goes first to residents of the community and then to the wait list. And everybody gets notified. So there's no rank order within the wait list. So somebody who joined the wait list yesterday has the ability to make an offer just the same way as somebody who's been on the wait list for 5 years. So the offer and the acceptance of an offer is really between the buyer and seller. The community is not involved in that decision, other than making sure that the buyer has an orientation and understands what they're getting into. Right, Martha? Got to know what you're getting into. So you can also let me know if you are interested in the wait list. We do encourage you to visit first, so you have a sense of what you're getting into. But if you live across the country, you can just join the wait list regardless. So we are a full community, as I said, but there will be openings sometime in the future. Next slide. All right.
We had
Now, go ahead, Lou.
we had a couple of questions from the chat that we can talk about. There was a question about HOA fees. Yes, like any condominium, we have HOA fees, which both fund our current operations, and we have a replacement reserve, which is set aside to help replace major systems in the building, roof, plumbing, etc. The HOA fees right now run from about $400 to $700 a month. Construction costs are going up, and that means that our replacement reserve is going up. So we're re-looking at that in light of new costs. But we do try to have a very a fully funded replacement reserve so that there aren't surprises where people have to put up extra money to pay for things.
Almost half of our HOA dues every month go directly into the reserve. Yeah,
that's correct.
Mm-hmm.
There was another question about diversity, and I'd say that the PDXC reflects the diversity of Portland itself, which is Portland is pretty white, I'll have to say. So we are a pretty white community. We do have diversity around sexual orientation, certainly around ideas and stuff. But if you look at our membership picture, we do not have people of color at this point, and that's unfortunate, but that's the current reality. There was a question about housemates. People have had housemates. Some people have, one guy's currently, well, he's not a housemate, he moved out for a year. But yes, we do allow that, and we do try to define what the rights and responsibilities are of that housemate with the community. We do not allow short-term rentals like Airbnb, because that seems counter to the idea of building community. But our one friend, Tom Bard, is taking a year doing an adult education thing at his college, and he's rented his unit to another woman who now is actually buying in. So she used it as a way to check it out. Ann mentioned about, we say we're a 55 plus community, and that is true. And that is a legal designation for fair housing laws. However, that we can have 5 units owned and occupied by people who are less than 55. So it is not meant to be a blanket restriction. It's just meant to be a general designation for marketing. Those are the questions I saw. Did anyone else see anything in the chat, Dave? Did I miss anything, or does anybody have follow-up questions? At this point,
we've got the chat, so folks could just unmute themselves and throw things out there.
Go for it.
Yeah, I'm just going to weigh in on the diversity question. The other thing that I think that pains us a little bit is our lack of economic diversity. Because we didn't have grants to build this building, because we funded it ourselves, we know that our unit price is relatively high. And we have not figured out a way to make our community more socioeconomically diverse. So we are really a group of retired professionals for the most part. And so I think that our solution to that has been to put time and energy into working for the benefit of people who don't have the ability to pay the money that we pay to get in here. So
looks like Marcia has a question. If you can unmute yourself, Marcia, go for it.
Okay, I'm a little bit curious more about the specifics of the guest rooms and whether you charge for them, whether somebody wanted to visit, could we access them, and how do they work within your community?
Okay.
I can answer. You want me to answer that, Lou?
Sure, go ahead.
That we have 2 guest rooms, and they are for the guests of members of the community. Before COVID, they were well used. Both of them are in use right now. One of them is a suite that has 2 twin X longs that can be put together as a king bed with a bathroom and a shower. The other one has a queen bed, and the shower is in the bathroom down the hall. It does have a toilet and sink. So those are free for members of the community to reserve for their guests. There's no cost involved in that, either to the PDXC person or their guest. We each have about 27 nights a year, and that's part of the benefit of the HOA, is that we have a place here in the building for our guests to stay. Toad?
Yeah, I want to point out that there is a requirement to clean the unit, the guest room afterwards.
Yeah.
And you can either do that yourself, or we have somebody who'll do it for $50, I believe.
Yeah,
so
$50.
there is that.
Yeah.
And a person who wants to visit because they're interested in co-housing can probably arrange to use one of our residents 27 nights per year. So some of us don't use all of them. So it is possible for somebody to come in and visit if the circumstances will allow.
Yeah, I think that it's as long as it's not taking away from the use of our residents for their own personal family and friends. That's the big issue.
Other questions? Raise
We
your
have
hand.
one on the chat from Gordon. More detail about aging in place thinking that we've done.
Right.
I think, Gordon, a lot of that is we're starting to address in our aging in community. Part of what we're doing with that large work group is talking about what happens as we age as a cohort. So it's not as much about aging as individuals. It's like, what do we do as our cohort ages? And how do we, how much support do we expect versus how much are we able to give? What happens when people start to move to the point where it's more difficult for them to live independently without ongoing support for activities of daily living? How do we balance the workload that happens between the people with more ability and people whose abilities are starting to slip? And that's both physical and cognitive. So we're starting to examine those questions. I think the first 5 years or so of any co-housing community is kind of like getting our feet on the ground about how we're going to manage life in the present. I think now we're kind of got our feet on the ground. We've passed COVID for the most part, and now we're starting to really look into that future and try to consider those questions. We don't have answers to all of them yet, and I will freely admit we do not have it figured out. Some of it we will live into, some of it we will try to put plans in place. But that's part of what this brand new work group is working on. Almost, I think, a quarter of the community is now talking on a very regular basis about these questions. So it's a very good question that we're
Can I follow that up just for a second, Gretchen, which is, what is your thinking about your relationship to individual offices, collective offices, hospitals, the outside institutions around you, in terms of how that might fit with the community's aging?
You mean like, should we buy that little rehab center up the street?
Well, for example, we talked about that when I was out there, but you also have, what kinds of relationships are you thinking might be discoverable with institutions that are outside that deal with the needs of people who are in fact aging physically and cognitively?
One of the things that we've talked about, and again, I will tell you this is all in process because we're just starting to really talk about these things. But one of the things we've talked about is finding a nearby family home, kind of, what do they call it, adult foster care home, and sort of taking over that home gradually as a PDX Commons annex, where people can go to get the physical support they need, or perhaps people who are having cognitive issues and need a little bit more support, so that we don't lose people out into kind of a series of institutions, because we feel connection to people, and it's really going to be hard to have somebody move out here, there, somewhere else. I think what we know to be true is oftentimes if people have to move out because they need more assistance, they will move close to wherever their family is. So there will be that. But come join the discussion.
Yeah,
we've got some big questions to deal with, right, Michael? Right, Martha?
Well, the reality is we are not a healthcare facility, and we want to be very clear about that. And we provide care for each other as friends and neighbors would. But there's this line when people really need more intensive care than the community can provide, and we're trying to understand what that is. We did have one member move out because he needed more intensive care. And that was unfortunate, but that was the reality. We hope that living in co-housing expands that length of time and we can be relatively independent, but there may well be a time when we need more intensive care, and that's outside of PDXC. So we're trying to understand that choice point. But PDXC is not a healthcare facility. We want to make sure people don't get confused by that.
Right. And part of the choice that we're trying to understand is kind of that ratio of what we contribute to the community and the burden that we place on the community, right? So that's a very tricky ratio. And how do we help people be self-responsible for having some awareness about that over time? This is fascinating stuff. And so this is part of the reason co-housing is so great, because usually we're not thinking collectively about these kinds of decisions. But in this case, it's not just about me, and it's not just about any other individual. It's like, how do we do this together in community, is to make these decisions so that both the individual and the community are thriving as best they can. Okay.
I want to add to that we've contacted other senior co-housing communities about this issue, and they are in the same state that we are.
Yeah, we wrote emails to a bunch of other senior co-housing places saying, what are you doing about this? And they're going to say, we don't know. When you find out, tell us. So we're actually going to do sort of a big Zoom powwow and try to see if we can put some brains together to figure it out. Not that we'll ever figure it out. Marianne, do you have an unmute and talk with us?
Hi, I'm Marianne, and I've been aware of you since before you were open. I came to a coffee one time. I'm a neighbor. I live at 44th and Hawthorne, and I've been actually the last year I've been in nursing homes and things because I had an injury, but I'm just about to get out and get back to my house. But I realized that perhaps that I'm thinking out the same questions as you were just discussing. You know, when do you cut the tie or whatever? I miss my house so much. But anyway, what I was wondering is, do you ever allow people who are just curious about this to come to events? Or I know you're reopening after COVID, and I know you need to be careful. But for example, I used to like to paint, and I was wondering if you have a painting group that meets, or any that I could come to, or anything like that. How does that work?
Marianne, because you are on the wait list, you have an entree into some of these things that others don't have. So we do not at this point have a painting group, but if you want to play the ukulele, let us know. Because we do have people who sound very bad on the ukulele, but we try anyway. Let's see.
The exercise group, outside people.
An exercise group. We just had a mask making group because our latest art exhibitor is does masks, kind of like these, what do you call them, three-dimensional masks. And so we had a group of PDX people who went and had a 2-day mask making workshop with him. So most of those kinds of things are just kind of pop-up, and we don't have anything that goes. But let us know if you have a particular interest, and we'll let you know if there's anything we can match to. I think Marcia had a question.
I just wanted to note there's an informal beer drinking group that I convene periodically at the local beer bar. So that could be open for outside participation.
You can't drive to that though, you have to walk.
Is there a wine group? That's important.
We lost our sommelier. There, thank you, Lou.
We do have some people that are wine, knowledgeable about wine.
Ah, okay. Yeah, let me know about the beer. Where do you go?
Belmont Station.
Belmont Station, right here
Oh,
on
that's
Star.
not far. Yeah. Oh,
Thanks,
well, that'd be
Marianne.
wonderful. Okay, thank you.
Let's get to Marcia's question. Marcia, what do you have?
Thank you for the notification, by the way, in the email regarding this, that you also mentioned the national conference in Madison, Wisconsin. I was wondering if any of you are attending and if you have any more feelings about that and if you've attended them before.
Yeah, I can answer that. Yes, I will be attending. I think probably Ann, who's also on this call, will be attending. I've attended the last 3 or 4 national conferences. It's a good way to get an overview about co-housing. There will be a lot of people there that are forming groups, and there will be a lot of people there from existing groups looking for new members. And there'll be a lot of people there, seekers, who are looking to link up with co-housing. There's a series of workshops, and you'll meet a lot of people and hear a lot of different perspectives. I'll be giving a workshop about aging in co-housing. There's all kinds of workshops about meal groups in co-housing and how do you make decisions through consensus, and a lot of very relevant decisions. So I'd recommend going. You go to the COHO website and there's a registration form, the Madison Conference, and it's going to be a little smaller group this year because the venue isn't so large. So it's probably going to sell out. And there'll be typically, the last event we had in Portland in 2019, we had over 500 people sign up. This one's probably going to be more like 350. So if you want more information, go to the website, the COHO US website.
How long is the conference? How many days?
It's usually, there's pre-events on Thursday and Friday, and then the conference is like Friday night, Saturday, and half a Sunday. So it's a weekend.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Tours of other events. You can get tours of co-housing groups around the Madison area on Thursday, and there's some intensive workshops on Thursday and Friday.
Oh, thank you very much.
I put the co-housing link up in the chat, and you can find, that's both where you can find a directory of all the co-housing communities in the United States, as well as information about this national conference that Lou just talked about. So it's in the chat. What else?
I just had it. Go ahead.
Well, you sure? Okay. You've spoken about sort of one of the pillars of the co-housing is the consensus finding. And I imagine along with that is some conflict resolution and such. And I'm just wondering if you, without naming names or specific details, if you can speak a little bit maybe about something that came up that was challenging and maybe the different ways that it was approached. I'm wondering about kind of the mix of formal committee addressing these issues versus kind of what can happen in casual conversations over dinner. How would you characterize that?
We never have conflict. Never, ever. I think all of that, Loretta. I think all of it. I think the last time that I wasn't in the middle, well, I was sort of in the middle of a conflict over that very kind of rights and responsibilities. It was a great big house agreement that we were trying to construct. And a lot of it had to do with how invested do people need to be, residents need to be in this community before they're allowed to participate in the consensus process. So for somebody who said, can I have a housemate? It's like if somebody comes in for a month and hangs out, should they be participating in the consensus agreement? Does that make sense? So there were some people in the community felt very strongly that if you were here in this building, you participate in the consensus decision. There were others who felt very strongly that if you're not financially invested in this community, I'm not sure I want you making decisions or participating in the decision making because we've got a lot of money tied up in this place. So then what we did actually to solve this is that we took the strongest opinions on both sides and put them together in a small group and said, find the middle. What's the middle? What can you both agree on? And it was a struggle, but eventually that group said, okay, this is what we can agree on. We brought it back to the community and the community went, yeah, let's do that. And so we ended up with all thumbs up. So part of what we've discovered living in community in terms of coming to consensus is that you really have to have very few hills. You really have to have very few hills that you're willing to die on. So really, it's a lot about what can I give up of my own personal view about this? Because we all know what's right, right? I mean, I know what's right. And what's with that person who thinks that something else is right? So can we give up some of that, hold some of that back, realize there's other people with different ideas? And as one of our members says so well, we have to learn to trust the wisdom of the group instead of putting ourselves out there as being right. It's really a struggle for many of us to hold back on that. But Dave, would you like to also talk about conflict transformation?
Sure. Gretchen passed that off to me because Lou's wife, Susan, and I, with 3 other of our residents here, have been on what we call our conflict resolution team. Toad is one of those. He just waved his hands. We've just transitioned that group. We are here and do a lot of behind the scenes work. If we sense distress in somebody, or somebody who walked away from a meeting unhappy, one of us who feels comfortable may just cozy up to them and say, how is it going, informally. But we try to keep our ears to the drums on and what's going on in the community. We are also here for formal concerns or complaints, and only once have we had a situation that I can think of where we were asked to intervene in a conversation with community members. We don't make decisions for people. We don't tell them what to do, but sometimes it's helpful to have a third ear with you in conversations so people can talk well together. So we've done that just once. And then we also do some education around communication and how folks talk to each other. So we try to be attentive to that, but a major value of this community is autonomy and self-responsibility. So we don't go where we're not invited, but we are here when we are.
Yeah, I think that living in community does demand a certain amount of emotional intelligence. I mean, we just have to work really hard to be respectful of other people and realize that things we say can hurt feelings, things we do can irritate people. So you just have to live with a lot of that sense of how am I coming across, which not all of us do. I won't name names, Gretchen, but it can be really, really a challenge.
Talk to me privately if you wish. That's fine.
Why don't you mention the kumquats?
Kumquats. Okay, I'll get to you in just a second, Toad. When we have an issue that we think is going to be controversial or divisive, we oftentimes call people together in the community, not a formal business meeting, attendance not required, but encouraged. We call them kumquats. We used to call them happy hours, but then our happy hour fun people said, wait a minute, you know, this isn't that fun. So now we call them kumquats. And that's how we sort of talk through issues and get a sense of where everybody stands, so that we don't do that in business meetings when we're trying to make decisions. So oftentimes the group that has a proposal that may be controversial, they'll bring that to a kumquat first. We'll talk it through. The group will massage the proposal before we bring it for decision making. So Toad, what would you like to offer?
I was wondering if it would be useful to have a brief description of how our consensus decision making works.
Oh, Lou would love to do that.
Boy, a brief description.
Thumbs.
Well, yes, that's how we actually, when issues come up, we have a pretty active committee session, committee arrangement here. So when issues come up that need attention, we'll often ask the appropriate committee. I'm on the community process committee, so if it had to do with like governance issues, community process, why don't you think about this issue and try to understand it? And we may hold a kumquat and ask people's general opinions. What would be a desirable outcome of this issue, et cetera? What are different options? And then we will try to come up with some proposals that seem to address the issue. And there we may also do a kumquat and get people's opinions on, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? And then if it looks like we've got something in shape, we'll go to the monthly decision-making meeting, which we call Committee of the Whole. And there we will again talk about it, and that's where everybody's involved. And we will ask, we usually describe the issue, and then we'll do kind of testing the waters. We'll ask people to show whether they are ready to consent to this issue. And if they are, we ask them to show a thumbs up. If they have some questions or issues, we show them a thumb sideways. And if they have serious concerns, that means we should talk about it more, we ask them to show a thumbs down. And that then gives us guidance of, are we ready to move towards decision making? Do we have to talk about it more? Or do we potentially have to take it back and rework it? So that's a very brief description of how consensus works. And it may take several meetings. It does take at least 2, but several meetings to hear everybody's opinion and to come to a proposal that is agreeable to everyone. Doesn't necessarily mean it's everybody's best choice, but it's I can support this or I can live with this because I understand why it's important to the community.
The thumbs down is an absolute block of the proposal.
Yeah,
and we ask people not to put a thumbs down unless they believe not that it's that it's they don't like it, but that it's unhealthy or dangerous for the community.
Right.
The proposal.
Right.
That's the basis of a thumbs down.
Yeah. Thank you. We have gone 15 minutes over our hour time. How are you feeling? If you're done, feel free to leave. If you still have questions or you want to talk to us, we're willing to stay on, but I want to give those of you who have somewhere else to be, and it's sunny in Portland. So if you're in Portland, you don't want to be sitting in front of a computer right now. Go outside. But we don't want to leave before people have their questions answered. Toad.
We have a question in the chat that hasn't been answered.
Would you like
Can you
to
talk about the outreach efforts, if any, into the community as a way to get involved in diversity, ethnic, economic issues in Portland?
Thanks, Lucy. Go ahead, Toad. You want to take it?
As getting involved in diversity, ethnic, economic issues, I don't have a good answer for that.
I think those are individual efforts.
We do some things as a community. We participate in a every other month food drive that delivers to food banks, and we have half a dozen households at least who contribute to that. We have a crew that cleans a couple of blocks of trash from time to time. There's an active program in Portland to adopt a block and pick up trash, and we have adopted a couple of blocks. And a lot of people are involved in other activities. We have one person who's very active in homeless issues, for instance.
Yeah. We did a Afghan refugee collection that was quite impressive. So I would guess that more than community efforts, those are things that individuals in the community very frequently take on. And we're not even aware of all of that, that people are doing on their own time.
Let me just say that in terms of, there's a big discussion around the country about how to have more affordable co-housing, to talk about the economic diversity. And if you're doing new construction, as we do and most co-housing does, then you're up against the reality of the costs of new construction. So that means that somebody or some entity has to subsidize that to make it available to lower income people. And that is an ongoing debate, very difficult debate. There are some communities that have some units that have been subsidized by their local governments, but it continues to be a debate. It's very hard to build a co-housing community. It takes a lot of work, and it's particularly difficult if you incorporate in affordability subsidies. So it's a high hurdle to do, and we're trying to talk about it at the national level, at the co-housing level. At PDXC, our units sell at market rate. So there really is no economic subsidy involved here. The racial diversity, again, has to do with our surrounding communities. Although when you look across the country, you will see co-housing is pretty white. Not exclusively, but pretty white. That seems to be who is initially attracted to it. And we're trying to work with various communities of color to see how the concept may make sense within their social cultural context. But right now, most communities, PDXC reflects our community, and most co-housing communities reflect whatever specific community they're located in.
I wanted to add to this, which is why my hand's up. It's never been our conception as a community that PDXC is the end all for all your activities in life. We do things together, we hike together, but we have a rich religious diversity within the community, less political diversity, but many of us, are encouraged to do things outside the community. You participate with your synagogue or whatever they're doing, or maybe you're part of a social club, or maybe you volunteer in schools like you did before you moved here. So outreach is a thing that we do try to do as a community, but it's also assumed that we do that through other groups as well. So those of us who lived in Portland before we joined here had extant patterns and things that we've done, and we've continued to do them. Those who have moved from other states have tended to look to the community first for their social, but we also encourage folks to move in to also establish other relationships with other groups, whether they be religious or secular. So that's part of the way that I would speak to that as well.
What other questions do any of you have before we call it a day? Looks like we're good. We have enlightened. Yes.
Again, if you're interested, you can join the wait list. If you're very interested, you can contact Gretchen about a physical tour. If you have additional questions, you can contact us through through our webpage. And if you're a waitlist member, you will hear, you'll get advance notice of the next time a unit becomes available for sale.
Yeah, and again, you get in touch with me through the website contact page.
Right.
That comes into my email box, and you'll hear from me about that.
And
Thank you.